animation has always been a way to reimagine the past, to make history move again. And there's been some absolutely phenomenal examples that bring once lost times right back in vivid beauty. But too often it stops at the surface, and for some reason they feel hollow and it just doesn't quite land. From my own practice as an animator who focuses on historical events, this has always been my biggest fear. When I began work on Te Hikoi, my goal was simple: to make the past move again. I wanted to take the events of the New Zealand Wars and bring them back to life, moments previously locked in history books. But early on I learned that bringing that history to life isn't the same as understanding it. My first drafts was so obsessed with surface accuracy, the right musket, the right pa, the right uniforms, and they still felt hollow. What I didn't realise is that accuracy without understanding can only make a work look right and authentic, but it can't make it feel right. That's a lesson I've come to recognise not only in my own work, but also in other projects that tried and failed to connect with the histories and the cultures they represented. Not because they don't care, it's because they mistake accuracy for understanding. And while not a historical piece, I don't think there's a better example of it than this: Avatar: The Last Airbender, and the movie that tried and failed to adapt it. Hi, I'm Lewis, and I'm obsessed about animation and culture, and that's what I'm going to be rambling on about today.
Is it good enough? Do you feel enough of my love inside?
I think the thing is that Shyamalan genuinely thought that by incorporating well-researched Southeast Asian art design, he'd crossed the bar, he'd done his work, and many other creators are like that as well. Shyamalan really delved into the cultural practices, the architecture, the religious iconography, costumes, calligraphy, other aesthetic works, and really tried to place them specifically and link them one-to-one with their historical analogues. The art design, the production design is beautiful, but it just feels hollow. It doesn't feel representational in a way that people I know who love the show and love the fact it relates to them and their cultures don't look at the movie and go, they nailed that, it reminds me right of home. And I think that's because of the spirit of the piece. For example, in contrast, on the show, while not specifically placing it within a specific culture, the actual core underlying philosophy is what they really took for the show. And that's why it feels so much more in place than the film. The two creators, Konietzko and DiMartino, really wanted the core of the show's magical bending to come from a foundation of traditional martial arts.
All the teachers I could find in the area ended up with Sifu Kisu. He had the idea that each nation would have its own style. We kept Northern Shaolin for the Fire Nation. We used Bagua for the Air Nation. There's a lot of tornado power, a lot of spinning. Tai Chi for water, this sort of flowing, balance shifting. And then Hungar for earth, this really strong, rooted physical one.
The two creators lived and breathed it. They let it shape the decisions they made, and it changed their view of things. In taking martial arts, in being a practitioner under their own Sifu, they truly got to, in some degree, understand the philosophies behind these movements. And then in their writing and creating the show, gave it back to us. And I think that's a big reason why the show has such a big heart. I was watching Hello Future Me's video on the movie, and at the end he talks about how Shyamalan is actually putting effort to making an authentic representation.
I think Shyamalan's approach was rooted in a genuine attempt to faithfully adapt the source material. He just went about a faithful adaptation in entirely the wrong way. And it's an easy mistake to make. It's easy to think, if there's more of the source material in what I make, it must be more loyal to it, right? Well, no, it's more complicated than that.
And that made me sad, because I saw myself within that. My first serious draft of a New Zealand War script, which began in 2019, was about the Battle of Hawaii. It balances the Māori and British viewpoints in a way that shows them really accurately and covers all the bases any historian would be proud of. But looking back, it just doesn't quite feel right. You know, it feels a little bit empty. It doesn't have the essence because it was written in a way that didn't utilize the advantages of animation or cultural knowledge. And when I started the process of talking with elders outside of Bowen Marae, I really began to sort of see this change unfold. And look, my initial motivation for those meetings was totally just to ensure that my depictions of the settings were accurate. If I've got the uniforms right, would this person wear this? But it evolved into something more because it would become the foundation of my whole methodology. It's this idea of building relationships. Generally, the first meeting with any one of these cultural authorities was an implicit test, feeling me out. Are you pure in intention? What is your intention? Any question about the history I could answer, but when it became cultural, I was lost at first. But thankfully, they saw my intentions were good and they helped. And I slowly began to learn, and the way I viewed things shifted, not from, is this uniform right, but to, why is this spiritual concept here? What sway would it have had over people? Why would they react this way to this? And those are the things that you actually need to be communicating as an animator. That's what's really important. This understanding really shifted my focus from recounting the events to examining what mattered and how the narrative sort of changed, because it pivoted from a chronicle of battles to an exploration of the underlying principles and the tensions that defined the era. And I know that sounds obvious in hindsight, but it really is an easy trap to fall into, especially for someone from the outside. And each subsequent rewrite, and even when I shifted the story to Te Hikoi, the animatic I produced for my RMIT Masters, it's all about showing not just the surface level, but the heart, the wairua, the spirit underneath. And that's the key. And that's what makes me so impressed with these two guys here, because they did that in a kids show. When nobody, Nickelodeon wouldn't have asked them to do that, but they took the time to care, and they took the time to implicitly put it into themselves. It's funny because this is the same problem that's faced by documentarians and anthropologists. They're aiming to represent the work, and it seems to stem from this fear that a practitioner might somehow taint the work by being involved in it. I know that's a common thing, but I can just say for animation, I found that to be nothing but wrong. It's the total opposite. The more and more you wholeheartedly and openly immerse yourself in it, the more you are able to actually represent it. It really is about lived experience. I think at the end of the day, to truly represent a culture faithfully, you have to be shaped by it first.